So now let's get today's event started. The problem statement workshop, 3 steps to kickstart any L&D project with Scott Provence. Scott, welcome back to Training Magazine Network.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully you can hear me okay. You can see my screen, big orange screen.
Yes, Scott, we can. Big
All
orange
right.
screen, and you sound great.
I sound great. Oh, perfect. Even better. Well, again, yeah, thanks so much. Really excited to be here. So excited to see all of the chats already coming in from folks. We are going to be using the chat today, so glad everyone's warmed up. Speaking of warm, it sounds like we've got lots of gray, kind of gloomy and cold weather. I am chatting with you all from Seattle, the Seattle area, and we are having a massive windstorm right now. So I'm looking out the window and the trees are just bent sideways. And so I was letting Philip know there may be a chance that everything shuts out here because a giant tree falls over our power lines, but fingers crossed. Until that happens, I'm excited to talk today about problem statements and what that is and how I've used those with a lot of different companies in helping them really define and figure out what they can do with any training initiative, or even maybe something that isn't quite hasn't quite evolved into a training initiative yet. So we think we've got an issue. We're not really sure if it's even really an issue, but we want to throw some training at it and see what happens. Well, before we do that, I'm sure you all have had to deal with similar requests in your lines of work. I want to walk through some key initial steps that I do. And we'll do this kind of live, but I also want you to kind of have a meta lens as you think about all of this. Certainly something that you can take back to your teams, your stakeholders, and run on your own. Hopefully all of these steps are pretty easy to duplicate, and I certainly want you to feel comfortable in doing that. This is also something that I do in-house with a lot of organizations. So we do either small workshops or really full-day events to try to get people really puzzling through and figuring out what is it that I want to solve and how do I want to measure success. The reason I'm harping on that so much is, why does this matter? Kind of that what's in it for me question. We've got all sorts of different statistics and sources we can cite for this. I like this one from the Brandon Hall group that talks about this major discrepancy between companies, a vast majority of companies acknowledging that learning and business strategy needs to be in alignment in order to achieve our goals, and yet such a small percentage feel ready to take action on creating this alignment. So on the one hand, we've got, again, 87% of companies, like, we know this is important, and yet such a small percentage, 13%, the inverse percentage, ready to take action on this. So why the discrepancy? And let's keep the chat window active and moving here. So if you've got either this is maybe an eye-opening stat, or the complete opposite of like, yep, this is exactly what I'm dealing with in my day-to-day work, Scott. But why do you think the discrepancy exists? What do you think is happening to cause such a big difference in these numbers? Let's see what here we've got. Lots of people typing here, so I'm eager to see if anyone's come up with a magic bullet solution here. Yeah, down to money. Certainly always the challenge there. Siloed information. Yep, absolutely. Budget concerns, capacity. Yeah, upper management upper management feeling disconnected from the rest of the org. Look at this. We've got 20 different problem statements here. We can just start to puzzle into. Yeah, these are really cool. Well, I feel like I could pack up right now. We've got a good list right here in our first 5 minutes of talking. What we're all doing right now is kind of a little mini representation. We see some of these major problems, and maybe we feel a little challenged, or we feel a little outside of our lane, and or this is a little daunting in terms of how do I address these types of problems. My hope is that the same format and formula that I'm going to show you today to work through a specific L&D problem statement, you actually might be able to apply to some of these bigger challenges. Is it hard? Yes. Does it require maybe some external help? This is certainly where me and my team are happy to come in. Like, yes, it does. And these are solvable. We can help you take these incremental steps toward getting better alignment. Another way of showing how this alignment sometimes can happen. when I talk about the discrepancy here. This is a great chart. It's referred to as the camel camel chart, or the camel diagram, because it's got this middle hump here. But this came from a book called Running Training Like a Business. And the co-authors of that book that have gone out and done L&D consulting for decades, and they found kind of two key groups that as they were doing their consulting work and launching projects, and then evaluating the results, they were always polling these two key groups. And I'll try to break down this chart a bit. There's a lot of stuff to read here, but you can see I'll put my mouse back on the screen. You can see that we have some basic, in very general sense, kind of ADDIE components here. So, can I analyze and define maybe some business needs in our first little quarter of the graph? And then we're going to kind of move into more front-end planning and designing. We're going to realize the business need, and that might include delivering a learning event, providing kind of ongoing consulting, and then ongoing operation and improving results. So administration, managing the learning centers, enhancing the offerings, measuring results. And we have these two kind of, again, an orange group of surveyed and polled results from these decades of consultative research, and we've got these blue bars. Anyone want to guess? And I haven't revealed what these two different colors are showing here, but anyone want to guess what these colors are showing? Let's start with the blue one. Anyone guess what the blue bars might represent? So we have a lot of either votes or resources kind of put into upper management. Interesting. Blue bars are where time is being spent for developing training, activity operations, time spent on the activity. Yeah, time spent. Blue is what we do. Yeah. So yes, the blue, where L&D teams are spending their resources. And again, this comes from on the ground research. So maybe not surprising to many, but yeah, where are we spending our time? We're doing some planning and we're doing some event design, but then we are spending most of our time in delivering the learning events, managing the systems, doing all of the kind of day-to-day work. And then let's switch it up here now. What is maybe the orange representing here? What do we think? Oh, and these are great. Yeah. So if leadership was more inclusive here, yeah. How exactly? Yeah, the value that people see, the business impact, stakeholders view. Yeah. So this is where. So again, these external consultants were coming in and asking the people writing the checks, the stakeholders, the C-suite, saying, "Well, where do you see the L&D team's value?" And all of the execs that they were surveying here are almost giving us the opposite answers. And there is this little, there's a great kind of middle hump here of providing applied organizational consulting. So in the moment, how can I make sure that I'm zooming out and connecting this back to results? But really this major gap in both the start of a project, so establishing the links with business. Oh yeah, well, you just gave, and this is certainly not to make us feel bad. This is often coming in because, hey, you just gave me this project a day ago and told me I have to launch it tomorrow. So I don't have time maybe, or I don't feel I have time to do this. But the executives and the stakeholders in the C-suites really see a gap here in I want this value and I'm not getting this from my L&D team. And there's great comments going in the chat right now. Yeah, exactly why you get an MVP. All of this stuff. And yes, this is an older thing. This came from 20, 25 years ago. Certainly everything that I've run into in my consulting absolutely holds true. I'd be curious if anyone has seen a shift in this. I certainly haven't. If anything, I feel like these trenches are getting deeper dug. So absolutely, yeah, good questions here. Yeah, this happens a lot. Yeah, short turnaround time, right? So yeah, one of the reasons we see this discrepancy maybe is because we are not brought in earlier on. So great conversations already, great grounding, hopefully. My point and my purpose, one of the reasons I love doing these problem statement workshops so often is exactly to solve what we're talking about here. Hey, I can't feel, Scott, like I can come in and do this work because I'm on a tight budget. I've got limited resources. I've got more often than anything else, limited time. How am I supposed to go back and establish linkages with the business and identify people need to accomplish strategies? I certainly don't want to put this forward as if it's going to solve any and all problems. But when I go in and I do problem statement workshops, these are targeted, sometimes as short as an hour, even that you'll see here. Typically takes me, a half day. But there are things that we can do that move us quickly up this ladder. Without feeling we have to sink a bunch of time or a bunch of people's resources. We can do some of these steps asynchronously as long as we're targeted and understanding this. Very cool. So again, it comes from running training like a business. Kind of institutional book certainly has been was out there before a lot of our latest technological updates. But some of the core foundations worth kind of thinking back through. And hopefully this graph gives us a little bit of a pause or a chance to remind ourselves the headwinds that we're facing here. So let's figure out. Let's dive into this problem here. We've got this discrepancy. We know that organizations from 20 years ago all the way up to today are saying, I know this is important. I got to link these. I got to link the business and L&D, but I don't know. I'm not ready to take action on it, or I don't know how to do it yet. This refrain has echoed around for years and years now. What can we do about this? And how can we start to dig into a bit? One of the things I want to do to get us started here, and Philip's going to help me with a little poll here, is I want to get people's initial thoughts on this. I've got a quote, and full disclosure, to be honest, I had to remind myself multiple times when I first ran across this quote, which of these words goes in which blank. And so you might see this on the screen, or you see this in the poll here. This comes from Dwight Eisenhower. He quoted, "In preparing for battle, I have always found that blank is useless, but blank is indispensable." And so I took out two of the words, obviously, and I want to see what people's think the order of the quote is. So is it that planning is useless and plans are indispensable, or a plan is useless? Wait, I've already confused myself. A plan is useless and planning is indispensable, or planning is useless and a plan is indispensable. There we go. We got some votes in chat. We've got some votes on the screen here. We'll give you a little bit more time to chime in. I've got some kind of historical results, maybe that I'll share anecdotally here. We got people asking, "Can I use AI to help me?" Yeah, this is really good.
And we'll go ahead and close the poll.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So we got pretty good. We're 3/4 of one, quarter of another. Yeah. So that's not too bad. I would say, so let's see, 22% voted for planning is useless, but a plan is indispensable. And 78% voted for a plan is useless, but planning is indispensable. Sounds like maybe few people had known this quote. I certainly didn't when I ran across it, a few years back. And then again, to my own kind of chagrin, I wrote this down, and then I would have to go back and check and be like, wait, which one did Eisenhower say was useless? The last time I did this with a massive group, we were split 45-55%. Again, slightly toward planning being the indispensable thing, but almost 50-50. Someone else just heard this quote over the weekend. So certainly still relevant, even though we're what, 70 years later. It's a great plan, but don't fall in love with it. Yeah, so I think we've got a above average group here, and yet check yourself in a day or two, or see if you can remind yourself, like which one's the one that was useless. Here's the answer. In preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Sure, Dwight. Okay. Let's go with that. Again, ask me on different days. Ask me when I have a different boss or a different stakeholder request, and sometimes these feel flipped. Scott, I love that you're running planning sessions, but can you please just deliver the report, because I need to bring it up to my quarterly business review, and all I need is that piece of paper or that document. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to focus on a plan study, even though I'm a little skeptical of their use. Well, we had a pretty good measure with our group here. So with this above average group, let's see if we can talk a little bit more about what is the difference. And so we've got some great quotes already. People, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Great quotes, best laid plans of mice and men. Yep, absolutely. So what is the difference now in your minds between a plan and planning? Let's just start with what a plan is. So what is a plan to you? Pros and cons. What is it? What is it good? What is good about a plan? What's bad about a plan? Again, often for me, the good thing about a plan is when my board or my stakeholders are saying, "What have you done?" Like, show me the results. I can point to it, and I go, "Oh, I just emailed it to you." Yeah, something you can execute. Gives direction. It's got a destination in mind. Actions you're going to take. Starting point. These are awesome. So it's not like, again, yeah, and this is a perfect list. It's not that a plan is I would maybe argue with Eisenhower, but not totally useless. I mean, maybe that gives us that sense of direction. Um, Finite, static. So, and I love that people are now talking a little bit. So, what are some of the cons of the plan? Um, and again, someone mentioned, finite. It's static. Maybe that's a good thing versus a bad thing. Ooh, I love this from Nina. Noun versus verb. Noun versus verb. Yeah, very cool. Plans can provide contingencies. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, these are awesome. I can't even keep up with all these great chats. But yeah, you can't can feel limiting potentially. May or may not change or offer flexibility. Yes, so it's very inflexible in the sense that, Scott, you wrote this plan a week ago and it's already out of date, but you had such nice graphics in there. I really want to stay with it. What am I supposed to do with that? When the plan doesn't work, then what do we do? Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't cover unexpected changes. I think we got a lot of these, way more than I have in my 3 measly bullet points here. But yeah, a plan is typically static and inflexible. This is something that I've found, which again isn't good or bad, but something to keep in mind. Plan is really good for simple environments. I am just a terrible cook, and so I rely on recipes for cereal. For me, following a plan in the kitchen, the recipe is perfect. I can measure out the same amount every time. Great. Put the milk in second. Got it. Okay. This is easy for me to follow. Another thing, and I think someone even pointed this out in the chat here, a plan is focused on a thing. So, oh yeah, it was Nina's, right? From the noun versus verb. This is great. This is focused on a specific thing. And if you've got a stakeholder who wants a thing, perfect. Here's your plan. Let's take this with a giant grain of salt because it's going to be inflexible. It's going to be out of date next week. But it is what it is. Let's shift over and talk a little bit about planning now. So what's the pros and cons of planning? And again, keep in mind, think about our own roles and our work with stakeholders. I love planning. I mean, I talk strategy every day, all day, every day, and yet where are the downsides of planning? My stakeholders never want to do it. I don't have the time investment's huge, right? Scott, you want to call all of the C-suite back for another meeting? Are you kidding me? Do you know how expensive that's going to be? Dynamic and flexible. Yep. Constant motion, adaptable to different things. Creates options. These are excellent. Downsides, analysis paralysis. Yeah, Scott, I love that you're still planning and you're still going over your pros and cons list from 6 months ago, but when are you going to actually execute on something? Yeah, everyone loves the planning. No one likes the execution. I love how we're kind of exploring this, this dynamic tension that can happen between both plans and planning. And so I think maybe the true value of Eisenhower's quote is, it's not just you only throw out one and you only go with the other, but you kind of recognize the give and take, the equilibrium that might need to happen between, okay, we did a planning, we documented our notes into a plan, and then we're going to have to go back and do this again. So plan, I think we've got all these too, right? Continuous and iterative, better for complex environments, right? So recognizing that in our organization here, things are in constant flux. We can't expect to write a plan and have it stay fresh for longer than 2 weeks. I also like thinking about this. The planning is focused on people. And I really like, again, for better or worse, when I get people in a room, even if it's a lot of different opinions, that can be really powerful. It can be great to kind of remind myself that the planning process, the conversation, and the natural evolution can be really valuable. Yes, and I can't wait to go back through this chat because I feel like I'm missing these amazing nuggets that would be way better than the bullets I have here. But these are really, really cool to see. Hopefully everyone else has a chance to go back and see these as well. Thank you all for sharing your results and your ideas and your own little nuggets of wisdom here. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this major discrepancy. This is these huge headwinds. This is why it's so hard for me to get a seat at the table. People need my value, but they don't give me the space and time for it. And then we recognize these I don't know, these dichotomies we can fall into, the plan versus planning, the ways that this can sometimes maybe derail a project if I either get stuck in analysis paralysis because I'm too far over here on the planning stage, or I'm forced to follow this 6-month-old plan that is so far outdated. So what can I do about this? And again, what's the solution, or what are the potential steps that I could quickly take, Scott, to get all of this aligned again? Well, here's the way that I like to think about it. I'm sure people have heard about the kind of the mousetrap problem, or at least the metaphor of that. It's another random quote. I think I'm going to be done with quotes after this slide. So we've got Eisenhower, we've got kind of a sales and marketing resource here, but talks a little bit about just because you can invent a better mousetrap doesn't mean that anyone needs a mousetrap. So how do you make sure that you're finding out whether or not such a need exists, and you have to define that problem that needs to be solved? And really, when it comes down to it, that I think that can work at the core of both plans and planning, and it can work at the core of why we have that discrepancy between stakeholders and L&D teams. Are we talking about the same thing? Are we on the same page? Are we defining, speaking the same language, defining the problems? I love this idea about the mousetrap, because it reminds me, whenever I get caught up in this is what AI can do, or this is what my new tech stack can do, this is a great new mousetrap. Does my customer want a new mousetrap, or do they want fewer mice? And can I pause and remind myself of that? What is the actual problem my customer is wanting to solve, or my stakeholder is wanting to solve? Okay, last quote. I think this comes from Einstein, maybe apocryphal, but he was asked, or said, if I was given an hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes or 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute solving it. So again, that same issue of we cannot overemphasize the importance of defining this problem. And even though it may feel like you have zero time to do this step because you've got to deliver this training tomorrow, even just taking an hour like this to set your team up for success can be really, really valuable. All right, I think. Let's see, Philip. I feel like I was waxing poetic there, and maybe is there anything in the chat that I was missing, or questions that have come up so far before we dive into our actual 3 steps here?
Go ahead, Scott. I don't see a question yet, but do put your questions in for Scott at any time here in chat. Thanks.
Yep, these are great. And again, I'm so excited to go back through the chat and not only meet everyone, and hopefully we can all connect. If you do have questions, even if you're like, I don't want to put this in the chat, there's a bunch of people in here, go find me on LinkedIn. You can drop them in the messaging there. This will be great. Okay, so our 3 problems. How do we get to the fewer mice? How do we figure out what the customer really wants? Okay, well, we're going to go through a step on let's figure out how we can define the problem. And I've got a really quick exercise that I do. It is not, it's the MVP style. It's kind of quick and dirty, but it really helps me get to a really clear definition, really short period of time. So we're going to practice that today. We're going to define the problem. Then step 2, we're going to ask a bunch of questions, and I'll give you some guideposts and some ways to do that. And then finally, we are going to chart risks. And so again, these 3 steps, and you'll have, like Philip mentioned, we've got this on the slide deck. Feel free to borrow, steal, take these and take them back to your own teams. These are the 3 steps that I work through within organizations when I come in and I do this targeted consulting of let's get everyone on the same page, define the problem, ask questions, chart risks. Are we ready? Let's dive in and do it. So step 1, define the problem. The idea of a problem statement obviously is not mine. This has been around, and so probably several of you know this. When you think about the idea of a problem statement or the structure of a problem statement, what are some of the things that come to your mind? What do you include in a problem statement? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Identify a gap. Absolutely. So we're here. We need to get here. That is a discrepancy of X, Y, and Z. Yeah, what's going on and what unmet needs? Absolutely. This is what's happening. Yeah, so a lot of this oh, yeah, there we go. Who and a what? Yeah, who does this problem apply to? The audience. Yeah, there we go. All right, we got an audience plus opportunity plus gap. I got this group. They want to go here, and they are X far away. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. What is and what should be. These are great. I love this. So I think everyone's kind of saying the same things, but these are the 3 things that I come up with, which again, just like a condensation or a rehash of what everyone's putting in here. So who's the audience? What goal or solution do they want to get to, and what's getting in the way? And you could say that in the same way that others have with this gap analysis. I've got this group, they want to get over here, and they are currently over here. I do like to kind of throw out what is the, is that a gap? Is it a barrier? Like what is the thing that's preventing them from getting to that goal? Is it just a amount of distance? They don't have X, Y, and Z, but maybe it's a environmental barrier or a logistical barrier. But for me, I can boil down a lot of the very elaborate problem statements into these three basic elements. And because I grew up with Mad Libs kind of for a lot of my childhood, I like to run everything through my Mad Libs exercise. For those that don't know Mad Libs, it was they give you a story with like a bunch of blanks, and you had to kind of fill in the blanks one word at a time, and it kind of was really fun. So for me, I always present my problem statements to my stakeholder teams and my own L&D teams in the form of a Mad Lib. So I say, can you fill out this sentence for me? And again, think back. I want you to kind of be always thinking application and real life, real world experience. So think about how quickly you could do this with your stakeholder group. Scott, I need a training by next week. Okay, great. Yeah. Hey, before you submit a formal request, or can you just fill this out really quick? What's the audience? What do they want? And what's the obstacle? That'd be the first thing that I really need in order to kick this off. You'd be surprised how often this actually gets them to go, oh, well, hang on, let me get back to you. Or it's really it's similar to Kathy Moore, right? So action mapping. If you haven't read action mapping, very very similar to like where any basic framework I think is gonna start really well with these kind of core tenets. Okay, so blank audience wants and needs, or needs blank goal, but blank obstacle gets in the way. No time like the present. And we've got a very active group on our chat here. So let's do this. I'm going to give you this isn't long. Let's pretend that we're a stakeholder, or maybe you're actively going through a project right now. Take 60 seconds and write out your own problem statement. Do it on a scratch paper piece, and then for anyone who is brave or bold enough, put it in the chat. Obviously, please don't share any company specific information or stuff that you're not supposed to. You can also invent a hypothetical problem statement, or keep it broad, general enough that you don't have to worry about digging into it. Think about though the opportunity you have here. You have almost 300 people who are similar minded experts in their own fields, willing to maybe help you workshop or brainstorm or think through a problem statement. How often do you get this type of opportunity? So if you're again, I'll stop talking for another 30 seconds. We'll just have some contemplative, quiet time to write out a single problem statement. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time here, and they're already coming in through the chat if you need some inspiration. All right, maybe like 10 more seconds just to wrap it up. For those that haven't seen, there are some really cool problem statements coming in on the chat right now. Really, really meaty ones. I really like this. Oh, this is great. I feel like I wish I could just take the whole rest of the session and just read these out. Each one of these, I think, is not only really well stated, and again, I'm talking to experts here who've done this, probably do this day in, day out with stakeholders, so I'm not surprised. But really clear, thesis-driven, topic-driven sentence that can drive a whole project forward. Let's see. This is really Rayan, you got a great one. Our frontline needs knowledge on our new online banking system, but we can't allow access in a test environment. I just love how specific that problem is, right? Like, cause sometimes obstacles can feel like, oh, I got to break this down because it's like time or massive obstacles. But sometimes it's like, hey, I've got a very specific obstacle about not being able to allow access in a test environment. Yeah, our club needs to fill meeting roles, but our members are not signing up due to work constraints. Yeah, so what's this work constraint thing that I gotta get through here? Service reps need to refer tax penalty notices to escalating team, but they don't know how to discern which notices need escalation. Another very specific problem statement with a very specific obstacle to overcome. I love this. So hopefully this is helpful just to kind of see, and again, scroll back through, and connect with each other. Even better, this is a chance to connect with others and go, oh my gosh, that's exactly the problem statement I'm dealing with. Can we offline this, or can we have a little one-on-one time to chat? I love this. Even just this first step, the simplicity of a single sentence exercise is really helpful. This also works in real-time environments, discussions with stakeholders. Not always, certainly, but I've done these conversations live, and even just a 5-minute conversation with your stakeholders can really break down and kind of dig into, peel the onion, peel the layers of a problem statement. I've had people reach out to me and say, Scott, do you have so ELB Learning, do you guys have a leadership training? I can go, yeah, sure. We've got all sorts of cool stuff. Can you bear with me and let me do a little problem statement thing? So tell me the problem in this format. The audience needs blank goal, but blank obstacle. And they go, okay, yeah. Our C-suite wants a ready to launch leadership 101 course, an e-learning, but we don't have one. Okay, cool. So audience, the C-suite wants a leadership 101 course, and obstacle, we don't have one. So just gimme. And all right, let's figure out, is that the kind of core problem? And ask a couple more questions, kind of dig in. Well, it's not the C-suite. If we just launched that, they wouldn't really be happy because they actually got that request from the recruiting team about some issues they were having. Oh, okay. So let's swap the audience out. The recruiting team, what is it that they want to do with that? Well, they need to fill more leadership roles internally, but then no one's qualified with our internal bench, so that's why we need the training. Okay, well, that's a different problem statement. Let's go to that one. So recruiting team audience needs to fill leadership roles internally, but having a hard time qualifying, what counts as good leadership. Where did that request come from? Well, it came from the mid-level managers, actually. In our latest employee survey, they were saying that they didn't have all these paths to promotion, and so people are leaving. Oh, okay. Well, so your mid-level managers want paths to promotion, but there don't seem to be any currently, and as a result, they're leaving. Well, these are entirely different problem statements. If I just throw an e-learning over the fence to you, is that going to solve the problem statement that we just covered about mid-level managers not seeing paths to promotion? Oh, well, it's a good question. Let's kind of figure out, maybe we need to do a little bit more work on this. This is like a very kind of distilled version, but real example of how we kind of take this through. And yes, I love this. Some of these chats where people go, "Oh, this connects with this other, the lean framework, or kind of the agile method." Yeah, like all of these other approaches. We can distill them down to this kind of basic building blocks of how we do some problem statements. Yeah, yeah, I love that people kind of asking live as I was going through my examples. Okay, why do you want this course though? Like, how do we kind of get into this? The fact that we're typing these questions is going to take us now to our second step here. Before I do, let's see if there are any questions on the first step, Philip, that I was missing.
We're still getting. No, yeah, it looks good, Scott. But keep on going. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I love this. All right, so we've defined the problem here, and again, kudos, thank you to everyone who's put in example problem statements into the chat. We're still got them coming in, which is great. Oh, I've got a question here from Jessica. So, what is your take on learn as a goal? Everyone's always told me that setting a goal as learn to is not an appropriate ID goal. Really great question. So, hopefully, Jessica, you don't mind me calling this out live. But, we've got an expert group here, so I'm sure we'll have ideas from others about the challenges, the pros and cons of learn. So yeah, raise understanding goal, that kind of idea of probably what is coming to mind to a lot of folks right now is how can I measure that? So how is that? Yeah, so you're seeing that in the chat here. I would agree with a lot of the chats that are coming in that it's going to be really hard to quantify what counts as learn. And I think this actually does lead us really well into step 2. Because let's say my stakeholder does come back and say, Scott, I have a really busy day. I will give you 30 seconds to write this out, but then I've got to run to a meeting. So my mid-level managers want to learn leadership, but they're all jerks and I don't like them. Okay, well, that's a terrible problem statement, but at least you've given me something. So we've got a problem statement now for better or worse, and let's say that it includes a desired goal of I need this group to learn something or understand something. As you've seen in some of the chat responses here, the immediate question comes to mind is, how can I measure, what counts as success for Learn? What would success look like? This actually gets us to, so we've shared our first drafts already. I'm gonna skip over that. This gets us to the second step, which is ask questions. So I guess I have kind of two ways of answering that. Yes, Learn is something you could push back on, but on the other hand, I'm okay kind of accepting it in my kind of crummy first draft problem statement exercise of, all right, you put Learn in there, you put understand, whatever. Let's get it down in the first step. Now here's my chance to really pick it apart. So step 2 is asking questions. And again, think about the process you have, and it's we always want to feel like we're coming alongside our stakeholders and we're kind of being in that consultative mindset. So I always want to take that first step and go, that's so great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know that's kind of a pain to this extra step. I'm going to collect everything that I can. Now we're going to look at our problem statement. And when we look at it internally, when we show it to our C-suite for alignment, what I want to know in the second step is, what sort of questions does this raise? And this might be where I come in and say, hey, I love that you gave me that problem statement. I've got some questions about when you said understand. What does understand mean to you? Does it mean the same thing to me? So start thinking at this step now. We've gathered our single sentence Mad Libs drafts, and maybe we've done a little even mini workshop if we've had the time to kind of align our room of stakeholders to say, can we all agree on a single problem statement here? And even sometimes even that by itself is challenging. But now we're going to go to the step 2 and say, now that we've got a single problem statement, what are all the questions that we can ask of them? Notice how this step, I'm not saying answer the questions. And that's, again, this is kind of, we're trying to slow people down actually. So I don't want people to even, interrupt me and say, oh, Scott, I can explain what Learn is. Not yet. I'm glad you can, but I want to just list all the questions we possibly can. So things like, what's the worst that could happen? This is one of my favorite questions that I could ask. What's the worst that could happen if I do nothing? I love asking this question. Other things that come to mind for me: how long has this been an issue? Who else is aware of this problem? Where are we disagreeing? If you've run across the 5 whys framework, this is a great spot to ask the 5 whys. And the short version of that is, Scott, I need this e-learning training. Okay, why? Well, because I need it for frontline. Okay, well, why do you need frontline managers need it? Well, because everyone's leaving. Why are they always all leaving right now? So ask it 5 whys down kind of gives you a chance to peel that onion back to the root cause of the problem. And so I was just about to ask what your favorite questions are, but people are already putting them in the chat. So this is awesome. Yeah, what do you need them to do after this training? One of our core L&D, thinking with our expert hats on questions. What do you want them to do after this? And again, this gets back to that first question. What about, should I put Learn as an objective? Well, you can, but before we just say that we're done now, how can we take that objective and then probe a little bit deeper? Why are they not doing it? Great question. Have they ever done it correctly in the past? I don't think I've run across that question before, and I love that one. I'm trying to think of some of my other go-to. Yeah, what resources are required to complete this project? What's the timeline? What contingency plans are there in place? How will we handle the unexpected? What assumptions are we making? Yeah, this is really great. I love this. Okay, so here is our next step here. I think we've got enough time for this. Again, we've got the brain trust here. We've got a group of experts that we usually don't have access to. If anyone is willing to copy and paste or retype their problem statement into the chat and allow with the understanding that we are going to pick it apart with questions, not in a bad way, but just in a, let's try to generate as many questions as we possibly can. This is your chance to put in a problem statement and get a massive amount of expert level knowledge. I will pick one from whatever that goes now, because I know that for the earlier ones, I didn't tell you necessarily we were going to be analyzing it. So I don't want anyone to feel thrown under the bus here. But this is, again, your chance. Oh, I've got multiple people typing. Your chance to get live expert-driven access on a problem statement? And if not, I'll put one of mine in, but that's boring because, okay, perfect. Let's go with Rachel's because Rachel was the first one that showed up on my screen here. So apologies if others come in. We are all going to focus briefly on Rachel's problem statement, and we're going to ask as many questions as we can of it. So you can see it in the chat, so you can already start formulating some questions, basic ones like why, all the way up to I've got a very specific question. So Rachel's problem statement: new hires need familiarity with program X, but there isn't a test user environment. How will they use program X? Oh, okay. These questions are coming fast and furious now, and I love all of them. Okay. How will they use program X? Why do they need familiarity? Why don't they get familiarity with program X? That issue too. Good. We got another person already. So why isn't there a test environment? How does this problem impact you? And you could assign that you to you, the stakeholder, you to the C-suite member, you, the frontline person. Is this something that they need to be trained on, or they can create a job aid? Back to Kathy Moore's action mapping, right? Absolutely. What is the environment that is best going to solve this? Great question. I'm so glad someone thought of this. From Eric, how do you define new hires? Just in the last week, in the last 90 days, does everyone need this? If not everyone, and then you can think of all the spin-off questions that are happening. If not everyone, then what is the distinction that I'm making to kind of cut off? Is it just time? Is it knowledge? How are they currently learning the program? Yep. How are we currently training? This is really great. How will you measure familiarity? How will we measure this? Yes. Can simulations work? What can we explore with that? Does this impact? Okay. So we've got, thank you to our expert list already. We've got, and hopefully Rachel, you're able to comb through this in more detail, but you've got now what, 50 questions, 70 questions that you can now think about that your problem statement has generated. Okay, I'll take a pause and a breather. I know that I'm like talking a mile a minute. Hopefully this is helpful. We're just going to start building one more brick in the foundation, but we've come in, we've maybe responded to a stakeholder or a C-suite or a boss level request of, we need you to do X. And I say, okay, before I do that and I just run off and kind of be reactive, I want to do a really quick exercise and just get you to write out the problem statement. Ideally, I would do this with all of my stakeholders in a room. And again, this is where kind of as an external consultant, I often come in and help kind of aligning the ships or herding the cats to say, yep, everyone's got their own problem statement, but can we all kind of agree on even just something as basic as audience, goal, obstacle? If we can't do that, maybe we need a longer workshop. But step one, just get a problem statement. Now, step two, the generative stage. Again, we're not answering these questions. I just want to get as creative as we can about listing all of the questions. When I do this in live workshops, we're doing this on hundreds and hundreds of Post-it notes, but you can see we can do it here virtually as well. Let's get our list of 100 plus questions, 200 questions, no answers needed. Ask why as many times as you want. We got a thank you shout out from Rachel. So yes, thank you everyone to helping Rachel out. And a great question from Jacqueline. I want to make sure okay. This is very vague. I have non-people. This is the problem statement. Okay. Yes. Come reach back out to me. I can help you with that one. All right. So moving on. Step one, build the problem statement. Step two, ask a bunch of questions. Now, step three, we are going to take our list of questions and we are going to chart them based on two axes here: risk and uncertainty. And I think we're doing well on time. We may not have time to live demo the third step. This is where being in a room or being with a group of internal stakeholders gets really, really exciting. But I'll certainly describe it out, and then you can always link up with me afterwards, and I can give you some examples of how to do this. But let's remind ourselves that when we get to step three, it's okay to not know the answer to these questions. Or if you're Rachel, you might be looking at this list being like, hey, this is a great list. I can answer maybe 3 of them right now. And a lot of these are just not sure. I don't have the, this is not my job, or this is above my pay grade, or I need to get 20 people in a room to figure that out. That's okay. We don't need to answer all of these questions, but we should think about what that lack of an answer or that lack of knowledge might cost us. So I've got this big list of questions. I can answer 20% of them. What are some of the risks and uncertainties related to these questions? You could even go so vague as to just say, what's the gut feel I have with this question? That third one makes me just feel like sick in the pit of my stomach. Okay, that must be something about that question that is either high risk or high uncertainty. I hope I'm not missing too much in the chat, but I'm gonna pose another question in the chat here. Can anyone define the difference between risk and uncertainty? This again, like to throw myself under the bus. When I first same with the Eisenhower quote. When I first ran across the concept of risk and uncertainty, I was like, oh yeah, I know the difference. And then I was like, well, actually, could I define that really well? So we got smarter people than me here. So risk is certain from Nina. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, shout out from Philip in case people haven't seen in the chat. There's a glitch. I guess some members are appearing as other members, so I apologize if I was calling people out by name who were not those people with the answers there. Apologies for that. But from whoever this is coming in from, yeah, risk is certain, risk is known, uncertainty is unknown. Yep. Oh, risk has a negative impact potentially. Yeah. Yeah, so we got some good. Yeah, you guys are all smarter than me when it comes to defining risk and uncertainty. Okay, risk. I like to think of it this way. I know what the possible outcomes are, and again, that idea of negative or positive. Well, yeah, I mean, you could certainly you could paint over that additional dimension to it, but even at its core, I just know what the outcomes are. The idea that it has negative connotations, certainly, absolutely. So if risk is I know what the possible outcomes are, uncertainty is I do not know what the possible outcomes are. And again, you guys said this in a better way in the chat already: certainty versus uncertain, or known versus unknown. But for me, I like thinking about these two distinctions of basically I know what my distribution is for risk. This is a 1 out of 20 chance, and uncertainty, I don't know what the distribution is. This is 1 out of infinity for all I know. I don't know what my possible outcomes might even be. And so it's going to be really hard for me to even assign positive or negative connotations. This might still feel kind of fuzzy, so I'm going to do a little mini story problem here before we get into actual step 3. So here's a little story problem. I will read it out, and then we'll see if we can figure out a low risk thing, a high risk thing, a known and an unknown from the story problem. So you are walking in an empty part of your hometown. Someone pulls you into an alley and they say, guess what? It's your lucky day. I'm going to take this dice, and they hold up a little die and they say, if it comes up, I'm going to roll it. And if it comes up 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5, any of those numbers show up on the die, top of the die, I will give you $100. But if the top number comes up 6, you owe me $100. So you're probably feeling, I would not be pulled into this alley. I hate this situation already. But let's just say we're stuck here. What is low risk in this situation? Let's kind of just analyze it objectively here. What would be a low risk scenario? We get a lot of people going, I don't trust this scenario at all. What do you see as low risk? Yeah, this is 5 to 1 odds, right? Yeah, low risk is the dice is coming up. The odds are in our favor here. So just mathematically, that's pretty low risk. And why is it low risk? Because I know the probability. There's 6 sides in dice, and 5 out of 6 is a really good kind of low risk, high reward odds. What is high risk? So I know the distribution, but the risk is high because the distribution is not in my favor. This is a really hard one. Ooh, some people are putting, my budget, I can't take a $100 hit, $100 bet. Depends on whether or not you can afford the $100. So good guesses on that. I would classify the fact of whether or not I have $100 as actually a known thing, right? Because I know whether or not I've got $100 either in my pocket or in my bank account that I would budget. So again, interesting distinction here that it's good practice for us to be thinking about, well, is it high risk that I can't lose $100, or is it more of like a known thing that whether or not I can do it? I would say, and this is a little bit of a cheat because it's really hard to come up with a high risk thing. If I am in my hometown and I know that I'm walking in an empty part of my hometown, I have, again, for sake of the argument and a small story here, I've had a pretty good idea of the distribution of this part of the town. So low distribution of people to come in and potentially help me could potentially be classified as high risk. Yeah, high risk of being robbed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that idea of like that distribution knowledge helps me classify the risk there. We already talked a little bit about some known things, right? I could lose $100 or not. That's something I could measure clearly. Finally, then what's unknown? And now we've got this is where a lot of that like gut reaction was coming, right? Of like, I don't trust this. So people have already said some of the high risk or the high unknown things. The dice might be loaded. Why would this person propose such an unweighted situation? Is this a fair situation? What number will the die come up with? Yeah, this is an unknown. Well, the die would get a 1 in 6 chance, but trust issues. Yeah, absolutely. So all of the unknowns how much money the stranger has, what their motives are, whether the dice is weighted. These are the things that I might want to figure out, can I solve with a little test hypothesis? This is where we can come in with our MVPs and go, okay, I like your proposal here, but I want to roll the dice 10 times on my own without you being involved at all. And I want to measure the outcomes. And if the outcomes seem to match my understanding of dice probability, then I will play your game. And if not, if I roll a 6 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, my MVP worked, and I can now go along with some clear knowledge. So this idea of charting, not only charting uncertainties and knowns and unknowns and risks, but being able to distinguish between the two. Remember what happened with our kind of high risk and high knowns. We can sometimes get a little slipped up on what we know versus what we count as risk. And this is what I do in our step 3 of the problem statements, is we take our massive list of questions and we say, I want you to chart these in terms of which of these can you answer and which of these can you not answer, and how much does that certainty or uncertainty make you nervous? So I like to go first on my known to unknown axis. And so again, you take your list of 100 questions, Rachel, or hopefully that was Rachel if the name had connected right. Just figure out, can you answer this? What quantifies as a new hire? Yeah, we have actually a very clear definition, and everyone who doesn't quantify that does not qualify for that training. Great, known, super known. Do I have a new vendor for a test environment? I don't even know what a test environment would look like right now. That's kind of unknown. So I'm gonna chart my questions along this x-axis first, and then I want to start thinking about the risk. And for this, it's a little harder. I can't just answer yes or no, but I like to ask myself, how nervous does this question make me? And yes, nervousness isn't a great quantifier. You can also do things like historical data analysis or expert consults or Monte Carlo simulations to run the ideas of risk probabilities, but sometimes my gut is just a nice little check. So I don't have a way to answer this question, but I don't really worry about it. I'm not getting that gut check thing versus the fact that I don't know what a test environment even would look like. Maybe that's a super unknown and a super high risk thing because I don't even know what good looks like here. Here's an example of a problem statement and then a bunch of questions, and you can see a couple of distributions here. And I know we're coming up at time, so we're almost done. Our IT team wants to reduce the number of tier 2 tickets. So our audience wants to do this, reduce the tier 2 tickets by 20%, but they say our software doesn't triage very well. Okay, great, good problem statement. Let's generate a bunch of questions. One question was, do you have confidence in your ticketing software? Yeah, actually, I do have confidence in it. So it's a known thing, not super known. I can't be positive, but pretty known. And also, if we've had to switch, we've switched like 3 times in the last year. Everyone's really good at it. We've got a system in place. Awesome. Low risk, known question. Let's put it down there. Now, is there a rule for what counts as tier 2? That was another question that came up. Oh, well, it's kind of a siloed thing. We all have our own little way of defining tier 2, but you know what? Maybe I couldn't really tell you for certain what counts as tier 2. Is that risky? Yeah, you know what? That makes me super uncomfortable now that I think about it, that I don't know what a tier 2 is, and maybe we need to define that a little bit better. So before we do a training on what software systems we need to implement, let's figure out what are in our high risk, high unknown categories and figure out how do we move these into a more known and low risk thing. And you might be wondering, we've just talked for an hour and Scott really hasn't talked about kind of L&D, so where the L&D comes in. And even at this stage, now that we're through our 3-step process, define the problem, ask the questions, chart the risks. Now can we move to training solutions? Well, maybe. This is where I like to go into that high quadrant here and figure out what are the highest risk, most uncertain questions generated from my problem statement and my questions. And these can now become the focus or the foundation for either trainings or just a conversation or an MVP. How can I roll that dice very quickly and just figure out, is this dice loaded or not, and get this into a low risk or a known area? And again, this is something that I run that really moves us into this first quadrant here. By running these charting exercises, I can show my stakeholders, this is how we're establishing links with the business needs. We are addressing the high risk, high unknown quantities, and maybe through trainings, but maybe just through facilitated discussions, I'm helping you de-risk some of those areas. We're just coming up to time, and I want to take a couple minutes for questions. I know that just with all the conversations, we haven't had as much, so you can always take me offline here. But I'll pause really quickly in case we got any other questions.
And Scott, we just had a good question from Kiki about, we had such a dynamic chat and exchange of ideas and just really a lot going on, and very valuable resources here from all of the attendees. Thanks. We'll make sure that the chat transcript also gets posted
Good.
with today's recording. But now's your chance. We've got a few moments left here to ask Scott anything. I'm going to go ahead and change here and also put up where you can rate today's session, please, and continue the chat. Once again, we want to say thank you to ELB Learning for making today's event possible, and you can learn more about everything they can do for you with their consulting services, learning and consulting services. I'll put that also in chat here.
Put my email on the screen here too, so you can reach out to me.
Great.
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I really do hope you got something of value out of this, and I'm excited to go back through the chat myself because there's some great conversations going
on. Absolutely. And Lori asks, what tips do you have when the process shows it's not really a training solution, but the client is insistent on it?
Yeah, that's a common question. Obviously, I don't know if I can answer it in 30 seconds or less. But I think honestly, even just doing these steps and getting to recognize the distribution they have, even that by itself can be a valuable thing to say. Look, I will still, leadership. I will still give you the Leadership 101 course. We've all agreed that managers leaving actually might be coming from these other things that we've collectively identified. But here's your e-learning. I can do that. But by establishing myself as that consultative thought partner, that's really where we can help get our seat at that stakeholder table to say, let's solve the immediate problem you might have. Yes, you need a training to check a box, but we all know that we've got this bigger thing going on, and we're going to be here as our L&D team ready to help you address some of those larger challenges when they come up.
Great, Scott. Thank you. And it looks like Colin says the 6 boxes. How can we make sure this will be useful and make a difference?
The 6 boxes. Oh yeah, the ones that I was the post-it notes maybe that I was showing up there. If
right.
Yeah,
I think so. Colin, if it isn't, let us know.
Yeah, and also I'm happy to hang on a bit or reach out afterwards so I can give it the attention it needs. I one of the things that I do when I run the kind of that post-it note version that you saw is really making sure that I'm collecting all of that, and when we go back to that idea of a plan versus planning, you actually saw I skipped over this pretty quickly, but I kind of remind leaders like, look, I will give you all of these post-it notes that I've collected, and we'll put it in a report. But remember, leadership, it is not plans, but planning that is the important thing. So recognize, this is kind of a sped up example of an exercise I ran once, where recognize that as soon as I de-risk one of these areas, another thing is going to probably move into that area. And so when I present these things, it can be helpful to have a report, have these boxes kind of documented up so leaders can incorporate it into their quarterly business plans. But recognizing that, again, this is a moment in time, and we need to make sure that we keep running this. And in fact, as your L&D leader of an organization, I can come in and say, I'm happy to run these little workshops, these problem statement things, weekly, quarterly, just to make sure that we've got good alignment, and that we continue to plan plan for the uncertainties and work that together into our more static reports.
Great. Very, very good, Scott. Thank you so much for a powerful session here today for Training Magazine Network. And once again, thanks to ELB Learning for making today's event possible. And again, for more on ELB Learning, just go ahead and click on your screen. Sorry, it should have. There we go. And Scott is still with us. Just in case there's another last minute question, we just don't have him on video right now, but he's still there in the background. And Scott, thank you so much again for a very, very informative and powerful session here in Training Magazine Network. A lot of very nice thank yous are coming from the members here in chat.
Thanks so much for having me. I really love the conversations, and please do reach out, email, LinkedIn, whatever it is. As you can probably tell, I love talking with folks about this.
Very good. And on some people's browsers that are still in, don't be frightened. We just launched the more on the ELB Learning's development and consulting services, so make sure you check all of that out, everyone. Once again, thanks for attending today's event. We look forward to seeing you back here at Training Magazine Network very soon. Keep on going. Put in your most useful ideas or takeaways, and don't forget to print out your certificate of participation and apply for that ATD certification or recertification point. Thanks, everyone, once again.